You don't think you're going to get a little heat and a little being pounded on a little bit by life? That's because God is shaping you. A diamond does not get formed without pressure. Amen. So sometimes we just got to experience that. Last week we learned from Celinda that pruning process, that taking away from us that happens in our life is because God is doing something. He wants to make us fruitful. Before you're seated, I want you to take a moment here and just talk to your neighbor about this. Often we come into low visibility times in our life. You ever driven into a fog in a car? Where you're low visibility, or maybe it was a snowstorm. I remember years ago we drove into a snowstorm, couldn't hardly see just a few feet in front of our car. Maybe it was heavy rain. Take a moment and share with somebody a time in your life, and I'm talking about a physical fog or a physical snowstorm. Where were you going? Who were you driving with? Were you the driver? Were you the passenger? If you were the passenger, were you worried that the driver was not going to keep you safe? All those kinds of things. Take a moment, share with somebody about a moment when you drove into some bad weather like that. All right. Some of you are great storytellers. Amen. I can see the hands moving, the emotion on your face. Amen. I'd love to have heard some of those stories because they looked interesting, just to see your face, the way you were animated and how you're describing it, waving your arms. Must have been some great stories. God bless you. You can be seated. There is the possibility for us to drive into a fog in our lives, though, not a physical fog, but maybe a spiritual fog or a time in our life when we just don't know what's going on. And so we want to talk about a period in Joseph's life this morning when he was kind of foggy. He was kind of not sure about what to do. Let's go to Psalm 37. But I want to talk about Joseph and this moment in his life when he just didn't know what to do. He just didn't know what to do. Genesis 37 tells us he was there wandering in the field. And we'll take a minute here in just a little bit to read that portion of Scripture. But I want us to look at Psalm 37 and be reminded of this great truth from God's Word. Psalm 37, verses 23 and 24. The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord, and he delights in his way. Though he fall, he shall not utterly be cast down, for the Lord upholds him with his hands. Amen. Aren't you thankful that in your life, God is ordering your steps? You may not always understand where you're going, but God's got this. God's got you. He is ordering your steps. So let's go to Genesis chapter 37. We're going to read verses 12 through 17. This is a portion of the story in Joseph's life when he is sold by his brothers. But before that can happen, he has to get to a certain place, a certain location. Then his brothers went to feed their father's flock, verse number 12, in Shechem. And Israel said to Joseph, "Are not your brothers feeding the flock in Shechem? Come, I will send you to them." So he said, "Here I am." And then he said to him, "Please go and see if it is well with your brothers and well with the flocks, and bring back word to me." So he went out of the valley of Hebron, and he went to Shechem. Now a certain man found him, and there he was. This is where we find Joseph in this story, wandering in the field. And the man asked him, saying, "What are you seeking?" So he said, "I am seeking my brothers. Please tell me where they are feeding their flocks." And the man said, "They have departed from here, for I heard them say, 'Let us go to Dothan.'" And so Joseph went after his brothers and found them in Dothan. So we see that Joseph was sent to Shechem by his father, right? This is where his father sends him. He goes to Shechem looking for his brothers, trying to find them and check on them. And when he gets there, what happens? There's no brothers. There's no flock. Nobody's there. He's wandering around, the Bible tells us, in the fields looking for his brothers. Have you ever been sent by somebody with a word, some directions, and when you get to where they sent you, or you go to do what they told you to do, it doesn't bring any light to your life. You can't figure it out. You're confused. Maybe when you get there, they aren't there. I remember years ago, and some of you probably remember this era, and I think we've kind of forgotten about this kind of stuff, and I'm not so sure that it's good, but I remember walking into the house after school one day, and my mother was supposed to be home that day, and she is nowhere to be found. I'm searching every bedroom. I'm searching outside, in the shed, out in the field, in the barn. I'm looking for my mother, and she's nowhere to be found. And I'm thinking, guess what I'm thinking? The rapture's taking place. You talk about a prayer meeting. At least I prayed until my mother showed up. And then I was like, whew, I haven't missed the rapture. No need to pray now. But often, right? I mean, we felt that way sometimes. It was just, oh, well, I've got an assurance. The rapture hasn't taken place yet, so I'm okay. And we always look to those spiritual kind of people in those times, don't we? The people we know are prayed up and live that way. Amen. But Joseph couldn't find his brothers where his father sent him. And so he was wandering out in the field. Joseph was found wandering and confused. So here's the idea that we want to wrap our minds around this morning. Confusion is that low point in our lives. It's that low point in Joseph's life when the father's word runs out. When you've done what you're told to do, when you've done what you know to do, but there's still no result. Or at least not the desired result, the thing that you were hoping for. How about when you prayed for healing and there was no healing? Now, certainly, I want to affirm this. We believe God's a healer. And there's a lot of testimony sitting on these chairs this morning, right? We know God's a healer. But there are times, we also have to admit, there are times when we pray and there's no healing. There's times when we give and there's no pouring out of blessing that we can't contain. We love to focus on that portion of Scripture. But sometimes we give and we don't get back. And we wonder, right? What happened? I know of people right now. You have sat in this church on those days, and we'll do it again today. We'll read our giving declaration, and you keep wondering when that check is going to be found in your mailbox. When is that bonus going to come? And those things, obviously, we've testified of those things that happen. So they do happen, but sometimes we have done all we know to do. We've done the right things. We've been obedient, and we are in a place where we are wondering what's going to happen. We're wandering around in the field because we have obeyed all the instruction that God has given us. We've done what was right, and we still don't have the answer that we expected. Well, may I take you back to the very first point we made this morning. God is not crafting the circumstances that you want. He's trying to craft the person that He wants you to be. He's shaping you, and He's making you into the person that He wants you to be. And so sometimes we don't always get exactly what we want. Any parents and grandparents out in the room here this morning, aunts or uncles who've had to tell a child no at some point in your life? Now, I know that's not popular these days, Your kids are supposed to get what they want, right? Thank you. Whoever said that, thank you. I remember getting spankings. I know that's way back there where that kind of brutality happened, and we've moved past that. We get time out now. I'm really not hating on time out, but sometimes that's appropriate. And obviously, beating kids mercilessly is not what we're talking about here either. But sometimes a little spanking on the bottom can help. Again, I'm going to get myself in trouble here this morning. But obviously, there are times when things like timeout are most effective. I want you to know I understand that and did use that correction tool in times. But, sometimes we just need to know that we don't always get what we want, because what we want is not good for us. I remember hearing, well, if you wanted to run out on the street, you think I would let you run out on the street? No, because it's not good for you. I'm trying to protect you. I got a purpose in mind for this kind of discipline. I tell you no for a reason. I'm not just trying to control you. I'm telling you no for a reason. So here Joseph was out in that field wandering around. He had no further direction. He didn't know what to do. But here's one thing that we learn from the life of Joseph that we need to apply to our life. When we have followed the Lord's commands and they've not gotten the results that we expected, what do? Joseph just wandered around in the field. I don't know what he was doing, but there he was, wandering around in the field. Now, Joseph could have said, well, I'll just go here or I'll go there. He could have picked a city. Maybe they're there. But rather than strike out on his own, in his own direction, in his own ideas, he waited. He wandered around. I like to picture him wandering around kind of in a circle. He's just kind of going from part of the field to the other parts of the fields, and he's just wandering around in the fields of Shechem because he has been told to go there, and that's all the direction he's got. So he's staying in Shechem, and he's wandering around in the fields until he gets further direction. So he stayed there. He was confused, but he didn't compound his trouble by going somewhere else. And often when we find ourselves in confusing places where we have prayed for something and it's not happened yet, when we ask God for direction and we're not been given direction yet, often we just strike out on our own. Well, I'll just go do something. I'll make something happen. And we get ourselves in trouble, right? This is what Abraham and Sarah did, right? They decided that God's plan wasn't unfolding, so they were going to have to make it happen. And often when we're waiting on the Lord, we get ourselves in trouble when we don't slow our pace, when we don't slow our progress, we don't find ourselves in some type of holding pattern. Often when there's fog at airports, airplanes have to do what? They just have to circle. Get in what is called a holding pattern, right? Waiting for further instructions. The pilot doesn't say, well, I'm going to land. I'm going to just go down there and I'm going to find a spot to land. It may be the highway, it may be open field, but I'm tired of being in a holding pattern. No. He doesn't do that kind of stuff because he knows his life and the lives of the people in the plane and possibly people on the ground would be in danger if he just took that kind of rash, made that kind of rash decision and took that kind of direction. So he's waiting for further instruction. And sometimes if we're not careful, we don't like waiting for further instruction. We just want to act, and we get ourselves in trouble. Here's what Isaiah 40, verses 28 through 31 tell us. Have you not known? Have you not heard? The everlasting God, the Lord, the creator of the ends of the earth, neither faints nor is weary. So when we're fainting, when we're weary, we have to know God is not fainting. He's not weary. His understanding is unsearchable. He gives power to the weak, and to those who have no might, he increases strength. Even the youth shall faint and be weary, and the young men shall utterly fall. But here's the promise. But those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. Amen. What a great promise that God has given us in His Word about what we need to do when we're confused. We just wait. We wait on the Lord. At some point, He's going to come through. At some point, He's going to answer our prayer. At some point, we're going to hear from Him. The worst thing we can do is make up a plan of our own. Just decide we're going to strike out on our own. The psalmist wrote in Psalm 27, he said, wait on the Lord. Be of good courage, and He shall strengthen your heart. Wait, I say, on the Lord. So sometimes we just need to wait. Here Joseph was, wandering around in the field until a certain man found him, the Bible tells us. Now, some Jewish scholars believe that this certain man was an angel. Some even go on go as far as to say it was the angel Gabriel. And then some people even say, oh, it wasn't an angel, it was God. This was God meeting him in that field. A theophany is what we'd call that. God who comes in a human form. He shows up and he looks like a man, but he's not really a man. This is God, a theophany. Other people say, no, it wasn't an angel. It wasn't God. It was just a man. And honestly, do we really know? Does the text give us any understanding of that? No, it really doesn't. Here's what we do know. That what the man said to Joseph was from God. It was a word from God. He needed a word. He needed direction. And so God sent a word. Whether it was an angel or God himself or just a man, we don't know. But Joseph received a word from God because he waited until God answered. He wandered around. Sometimes wandering around has got a purpose. He waited until God answered his prayer. So it's not who the man was that matters, but why the man was there that matters. He was there because Joseph needed a word from God. How many of you have ever been sent somebody with a word? Somebody came to you and spoke a word maybe you didn't even know them, but they had a word from you. They spoke into your life, and you knew it was a word from God. This is what was happening for Joseph. He knew he needed to hear this word. You see, here's the point. If Joseph doesn't find his brothers, he doesn't go to Dothan. If he doesn't go to Dothan, he's not thrown in a pit by his brothers. And if he's not thrown in the pit by his brothers, he isn't bought by the Midianite merchants. If he's not bought by the Midianite merchants, he can't be sold to Potiphar and end up in Potiphar's house. If he isn't in Potiphar's house, he can't be lied on by Potiphar's wife. If he's not lied on by Potiphar's wife, he won't be thrown into prison. If he isn't thrown into prison, he doesn't meet the baker and the butler and interpret their dreams. If he doesn't interpret their dreams, the butler doesn't survive and get returned to Pharaoh's palace. And there he forgets Joseph. If he doesn't forget Joseph, he can't remember him at the right time. If he doesn't remember him at the right time, Pharaoh doesn't find out about Joseph, so Joseph can interpret his dream. If he doesn't interpret the dream, he doesn't end up prime minister in Pharaoh's palace. His people can't be saved. He doesn't end up in Pharaoh's palace. His bones can't be carried out of Egypt to the promised land. This works out real nicely in the English translation. I know it's probably not this way in its original language. But if you'll notice all the P words that end up in Joseph's life. He's in a pasture. He's in a pit. He's in Potiphar's house. He's in prison. He's in Pharaoh's palace. He becomes the prime minister. And eventually he says to his people, when you leave, because I know God's going to keep his promise, when you leave, you don't leave my bones here. You carry my bones to the promised land. So he's got to get to Dothan. He's got to get there. So God sends a man with a word. And so that's why that man was there. So Joseph could get that word. When we are confused, don't go to the left or the right. Don't go behind you or forwards. Don't go north, south, east, or west. If you've got to do anything, go in a circle. And make it a prayer circle, okay? Make it a prayer circle. Just pray for further instruction. Often we make bad mistakes when we're frustrated and we're confused and we think we just got to do something. No, don't do something. Don't do anything that's rash or harsh or mean or cruel or terrible. Wait on the Lord. And this is what Joseph did. He may have wandered around, but he was not wondering if God was going to give him a word. He knew eventually God would give him a word, and he did. So the psalmist said it this way, be still and know I am God. One translation says it this way, stop your striving and recognize I am God. The Larry Gimnich version would be, shut up and listen. I know that's not popular. You're not supposed to say that word, right? Shut up. That's a bad word to say. But I have to say that there's been a time or two when I have grabbed the microphone on the school bus and said, shut up! I've got to hear what They're saying from the transportation radio, would you shut up? I've got to get further instructions. Sometimes we just need to shut up and wait on God. Amen. Keep believing in what you know is true. We're going to watch the video now.